The doors of your car will close automatically. Please keep your head and arms inside and remain seated at all times. And please, no smoking. Thank you.
Matterhorn Matt presents Matterhorn Mondays.
Hey there, Mountaineers. Welcome to episode 44 of Matterhorn Mondays. I'm your host, Matterhorn Matt.
And I'm Alex, the historian.
And today we have an awesome podcast planned for you guys. Hopefully you all enjoy. Hopefully you have a lot of fun listening to Alex and I talk about everything we talk about. Yeah. I was trying to think of what I normally say for the intro, and I completely blanked, but that's okay. It's okay. And I did want to say before we get everything underway, I did want to reiterate, I put out a video the other day about the meetup Alex and I are having in Disneyland. I just wanted to kind of re-say all of the info for that, just in case some of the people who are listening to the podcast didn't watch the video that I put out about it. So Alex and I are having a meetup July 20th at 10:30 a.m. in the lobby of the Grand Californian Hotel. I believe LMG Vids is going to be there as well, and so is Second Star, two really awesome Disney YouTube channels. Yeah, we'll be giving out little buttons. I ordered little buttons to hand out for Alex and I. They're going to be getting in the day before I leave, so hopefully they come in on time. I don't want them to be a day late, and then we won't have anything to give out to you guys. But yeah, meetup July 20th at 10:30 a.m. in the lobby of the Grand Californian Hotel. We will be hanging out there for probably like 15-ish minutes, and then we're going to head out to downtown Disney to get some food. Not sure where we're going to be getting food. It'll probably just be, we'll just wing it, figure out where to go. Maybe we'll take a vote. I don't know. We're not really sure how many people are going to come. Alex and I sort of predicted like 5 to 10 people would be there, maybe. So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully a lot of people show up. I don't know what I'm trying to say. But yeah, so that is July 20th at 10:30 in the morning. Not 10:30 at night. 10:30 in the morning in the lobby of the Grand Californian Hotel. Hope to see you all there. And yeah, that's that. Let's see.
I think so far I've got about 5 people that have confirmed that they're coming. So
5. I think I probably have
at
like
least
5 as well. So maybe 6. I don't know. I didn't count them, but I'm okay. Yeah, so 10 people would probably be the right amount that of people that would be coming. But yeah, hopefully all of you guys can make it out there. It'd be awesome to meet some of you guys. And I will also be in Disneyland the previous 3 days, the 17th, 18th, and 19th. So if you happen to see me in the parks, then feel free to just run up to me, say hi. I don't really know how this is like supposed to go down. If you guys want to like ask for a picture or something, I don't really know how this works. I'm not like a celebrity or anything, so it'd be kind of weird. But yeah, if you guys happen to see me in the parks, feel free to just, like I said, run up to me, give me a high five, and yeah,
give them a hug.
If you guys want to give me a hug, or if you guys want to kiss me on the cheek, I mean, I'm okay with that. Oh my goodness. Anyways, moving on to the actual meat of the podcast. Let's get into our This Week in Disney News. This week, I still don't have a title for this segment. Yeah, so This Week in News, Toy Story Land opened in Walt Disney World with a 2-hour wait, not for the rides, a 2-hour wait to get into the land itself. That kind of blew my mind a little bit, because of course the rides were 3+ hours. You know, the Slinky Dog Dash Coaster and the alien swirling saucers. But it was an extra 2 hours just to get into the land, and I believe Hollywood Studios opened up early that morning. I think it was at like 6:30 they opened up, and 2 hour wait just to get into Toy Story Land, and that is like absolutely crazy. I would never wait 2 hours to get into the land, and then another 3 hours just to get on the attractions in the land. That'd be crazy. Alex, I just wanted to quickly ask your opinion. What are your thoughts on Toy Story Land now that it's opened?
It's not a land I would visit. I mean, it's great for what it is, and it seems that a lot of people really want it. But I myself am surprised it had a 2 hour wait just to enter the land. That's kind of crazy. I mean, it shows that the land is probably going to be really popular, which is something I wouldn't have expected. But
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you see, the reason why I don't really like it so much is I'm not a big fan of huge like props and big oversized things. And even though I get the reason why. I mean, everyone's going to explain to me, well, Alex, it's because you're shrunken down to the size of a toy. I know, I get it.
Yeah.
I just don't like. It still bothers me. It still seems tacky. I mean,
It's just lazy. It's the easiest theming in the world to do. Just
it is. I mean,
make everything huge. Yeah.
Yeah, huge toy blocks and race cars and Legos, not Legos, but specifically not Legos because they can't put Legos in Toy Story Land. But Lincoln Logs, whatever. Like, it's just tacky to me. Even though it's supposed to be Toy Story themed, but nevertheless, other people want it, so it must be something, right?
Yeah, and this is sort of like a preview. Everyone's already saying it in chat about the opening of Galaxy's Edge. I don't even want to imagine. Okay, so if Toy Story Land, Toy Story is the land that this is the theme that this land is based after. If a land based on Toy Story can get a 2 hour wait to get into the land itself, I don't even want to imagine the wait to get into Star Wars Land, because I'm sure Star Wars fans outnumber the Toy Story fans probably like 5-1. It honestly, I could see the wait time to get into the land maybe like 3 or 4 hours, if Disney lets it get that high. But that's a topic for a whole other podcast. We might get into that next week, or maybe even we might get into it in this week. I don't know if we have some time later on. But second piece of Disney news, Ant-Man and the Wasp, if you guys are Marvel fans, opened up Friday. I was going to say yesterday. Opened up on Friday with an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm very excited to see this movie. It'll be sort of a change of pace from the depressing movie that was Infinity War. Sort of like a happy, or I don't know what I'm trying to say. It'll make me more happy than Infinity War did, because Infinity War was very sad and depressing, and this movie looks like it's going to be an exciting, action-filled adventure. And for the last piece of this week in Disney news, Walt Disney World introduced a new Florida resident annual pass. So I'm going to go ahead and quote from WDW Info, because I had no idea what this was when I first saw the headline. Quote, the Florida Resident Theme Park Select Pass includes at least 325 days of access at select theme parks and at least 175 days of access to all 4 theme parks throughout the year. So this pass is is obviously for Florida residents only. I'm guessing they're gonna get like a cheaper compared to all the other passes. Sort of like I think Disneyland has the same thing with the SoCal select passes, all that kind of stuff. So this is sort of exciting. I believe this is like the first sort of Florida resident annual pass that Walt Disney World has had. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm probably wrong, but yeah, so that's that. Disney news. Thank you all for listening to that, and we will see you all next week for Matterhorn Mondays. Just kidding. Moving into our first actual topic, someone pointed out, actually, Bryce said there was a 3-hour wait to get into Pandora when it first opened. So that already tops Toy Story Land. 3 hours to get into Pandora. I mean, it's understandable, I guess. I would have figured that Toy Story Land would have the better or the longer wait to get inside, but still 3 hours. Yeah, I'm gonna predict 5 hours for Galaxy's Edge. 4 to 5 hours. That's my prediction. Come back a year from now. Come back to this episode a year from now, and you'll see if I'm right or if I'm wrong. And if I'm right, you all owe me a bottle of Snapple. Just kidding. But moving into our first piece of Disney news, here we have, I'm sure many of you have seen, the new stunt animatronics that Walt Disney Imagineering has showcased recently. This is sort of incredible. This is like something out of like movies from like the 50s that people like robots almost like taking over. This is like exactly what that is. This is like the beginning of robots taking over all the jobs that people have. Like stuntmen, watch out, stuntmen, because Disney's robots are going to be taking your jobs very soon. Yeah, this is crazy. If you just look at this GIF from Walt Disney Imagineering Research and Development, reading from the bottom right corner of the GIF, it shows an animatronic being launched into the sky and then doing poses. As you can see, the arms sort of open up, and it does like a little curl and like a tuck and roll almost when it lands. That's crazy. Just this GIF alone is just mind-blowing that they're able to do this. And from what I can tell, just looking at the GIF, there is no like outside wires. It's almost like everything mechanical is contained inside of the animatronic itself, which is even more crazier, because if you think about it, all the audio animatronics in Disneyland are obviously of course connected to, you know, like a remote location where they're all controlled and monitored. But this is like next level, because like I said, there's no, at least from what I can tell, there's no visible wires connecting this to anything. And I mean, of course, how could there be any visible wires if they're doing flips and everything like this? Yeah, that's just my first impressions on this GIF. Alex, what are your first impressions on Disney's new stunt animatronics that they've recently showcased?
Well, you know what's funny was when I first saw the video, because there's a video that belongs to this GIF, but when I first saw the video, I was like, oh, so what? It can, like, you know, it can do poses or whatever. Mm-hmm. But as I thought more about it, I was kind of like, well, wait, that is kind of impressive, because it can do like backflips and things while it's in the air. And yeah. How do you get a robot to do backflips? I mean, like, you know, it takes some kind of like what do they call that? Like kinetic motion to create like a backflip, you know? It's one thing to get into like a fetal position pose, you know, when you're doing a backflip, but it's another thing to actually make the robot flip around. And so it's really interesting to see how they did this. And basically it's literally a robot. It's not really an audio animatronic. It's literally a robot that I believe is controlled by a, what do they call it? A remote of some kind, like a remote mechanism that can control it. But it's really interesting that they did that. And so anyway, it's impressive, and I wonder, is it going to be used for movies or for you know, the rides or something? Like, I mean, it could be used for both. I mean, why just settle for one thing, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, you can see from the video that the robots, they can swing and do these flips and and land in the same spot every single time. So yeah, I'm impressed.
Gosh, just this one clip of this video from TechCrunch. It does, okay, I'm gonna sort of relay out step by step what this robot does before it launches, what it does mid-launch, and then what it does as it's sort of making its descent. So first, its head, kind of like, it's almost weird seeing this. It's like a robot that is almost like sentient. That's kind of what the feeling I get from this. It's kind of creepy. But the first thing this robot does is head, let's see, there his head looks up, and then it launches it, and then it does twirls in the sky. This is the clip. It does like, it spins like, not just like somersaults. It spins like, oh, I can't think of like the right terminology, but it like does a somersault, and then like mid somersault it like rotates its body. That is just so mind-blowing. Like, oh, this is, yeah, that's all I have to say. This is amazing. That's the only thing I can say. This is just next level. Never thought I'd see this in my lifetime. Wizardry is what it really is. Because yeah, this is, gosh, I'm just so blown away by this. Even just like the GIF is just so impressive. And Bryce has said, Ultron and Skynet effect, be careful. Yes, this is like what I said, this is sort of moving into that sort of futuristic type that you see in like horror movies, where like robots are taking over, taking all the jobs, and then they eventually revolt against the humans.
You know what's funny too is like a human could do these stunts, which is what's interesting. Like a human totally could do these stunts, but the difference is that you don't have to pay the stunt person.
Yeah.
You know, when you want to do a stunt, you just set up for the stunt, which costs just as much as setting up for a human stunt. But the difference is you're not paying this stunt person several $1,000s to do a certain stunt, and you can practice as many times as you want without paying this person hourly to do the stunt, or whatever they pay for the stunt. But yeah.
Gosh, yeah, so that's basically what this is. Sort of replacing humans in Disney's sort of stunt shows, and probably one of their upcoming stunt shows. I think the overall consensus is that this is going to be for some sort of Marvel Land, because as you can see in the GIF, that pose that it makes with its like arms backwards, that's sort of like a superhero-ish kind of pose. Yeah, so this will probably be incorporated somehow into like a stunt show, or maybe even into an attraction in any of the future Marvel Lands, the one in California or like the one in Paris. It's just very interesting. That's the word I'd use to sum this whole topic up. Very interesting, because like I said, I never thought I would see robots doing flips and like twirls mid-air without the aid of like any other strings or like harnesses or attachments. It's very very mind-blowing to me. Yeah, so I'm going to quote from The Verge. Article is linked down in the description. Quote, Disney hasn't said where in its theme parks these robots will end up, but it's not hard to imagine them dressed up as famous Marvel or Pixar characters, ready to fly across the stage, or should that be fall with style, as a stand-in for their human counterpart. So yeah, even these articles, these insiders don't have any clue what these are going to be used for. I don't really see them being used for Pixar characters, because like, I'm trying to think, the only really Pixar character that does a lot of like flips or like flies is like Buzz Lightyear, but I wouldn't, if I were Disney, I wouldn't really make a stunt show based around Pixar. That's kind of weird to bring up, but yeah, the only really place that I feel like these would have the greatest use is in The Incredibles. That's a good one. I completely forgot about The Incredibles. But yeah, Iron Man is Bryce saying he looks like Iron Man. This is 100% being used or going to be used for the upcoming Marvel Land. And an MCU stunt show would be an amazing... I would definitely pay a lot of money to watch a Marvel Cinematic Universe stunt show with this kind of robotics in it. That's like... I don't know. I'm still like kind of mind blown from this whole thing, because before we started this episode, I'd only seen this GIF. I didn't see any of the other clips from the video that I showed you a couple seconds ago. But yeah, this is like next level Disney animatronics. But yeah, Alex, any closing thoughts on this topic?
No.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to see like the progression of this within the next couple of years, because I mean, I'm sure this is not perfected at all. It's probably going to be like 100 times better when they actually implement it in the shows, and like the animatronics are all dressed up in costumes. Like, just imagine that being Iron Man, like dressed up as Iron Man, or even Captain America. Like, that is like my dream, to see stuff like this, like literally stuff from the movies translated like in real life with like robots. That's like, oh my gosh. Okay, yeah. Moving on from this topic, because I'm just gonna end up rambling on forever about how awesome this is. Moving on to our second topic. Alex and I are going to list off our top 3 attractions or experiences in Disneyland that are untouchable, that if Disney ended up changing or altering in like any major way, fans would have a fit. Fans would I guess fans would like picket Disney. Fans would not go back to Disneyland if they altered these attractions. Not necessarily to that extreme, but you guys get what I'm talking about. Untouchable attractions in Disneyland.
Yeah, I originally had an idea for this topic because I was thinking about like stuff that doesn't really change that much, stuff that is gonna stay at Disney for a long time and not really go away. So it, like you said, it's also stuff that like fans would have a fit about if it were changed or altered or stuff like that. But yeah, mainly stuff that I felt were basically untouchable. You can't destroy it. You can't get rid of it. It's going to stay there. So
Bryce is saying nothing is untouchable. That, I guess that's true to an extent. We'll get into that later after we list off everything, but yeah, so.
Yeah.
I'll start with my number 1 pick. My number 1 untouchable attraction in Disneyland is Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. Mainly because Walt was such a lover of Abraham Lincoln, and this was such a groundbreaking attraction as it was when it was first showcased at the World's Fair. I mean, before this, there were like no other human-like audio animatronic, like figures as lifelike as they were. And Max said they touched Lincoln. I mean, of course, most of these attractions have been altered with to some extent, but the same sort of premise still, exists with the great moments with Mr. Lincoln. Almost all of the other attractions, minus one attraction that Alex picked. But Alex, you were gonna say something while I interrupted you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it's okay. This topic isn't about the fact that it's never been altered or never been touched. That's not what it's really about. I call it untouchables just because it's a short way of saying it's something that won't be gotten rid of. It's something that you can't just it's part of Disneyland. You can't just destroy it. So the things we're going to list off, it's not that Disney's never touched it or ever refurbished it or whatever. It's just that it's something that will not go, something that will not be gotten rid of.
Yeah, and like I said, a lot of these attractions have already been altered to some extent. Max just said in the 1990s they altered the Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln to show the Civil War, and with a couple of other changes. But it still has, like the same premise, the same sort of concept as it did back when it first opened in the World's Fair. But yeah, so my number one pick is Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. Like I said, just because Walt was such a lover of Abraham Lincoln, and like I said, it was the first attraction to feature like a major audio animatronic, like human-like figure. It's almost like if Disney got rid of this, I feel like it'd sort of be like disrespecting. This is gonna sound weird. It's almost like Disney would be disrespecting, like Walt, just because, like I said, this is the first attraction to feature like a human-like audio animatronic. And honestly, I had never experienced Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln until my last visit. My dad had always been saying that we should go on it, but I always thought, what? Abraham Lincoln? This isn't school. I don't want to learn about Abraham Lincoln, but it really is an amazing attraction. Even though sometimes I will use it just to get out of the heat for a while, just to sort of cool down in the air conditioning, and some people use it to take naps too. I mean, that's all cool, but Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, like I said, is really one of those classic Disney attractions, like really, really classic Disney attractions. Not like Pirates of the Caribbean classic or like Haunted Mansion classic, but OG classic attraction that Walt himself had a major hand in creating. And yeah, so that's my first pick for Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. Alex, what do you have to say about Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln being untouchable?
Well, it's an attraction that has basically remained since they first put it in. I mean, at one point it was on hiatus, but nevertheless it was brought back, and there's a good reason for that. Like you said, it's the first human like audio animatronic that Disney has created, and it really has a history with the Disney parks now. And so the other thing too is it gives a proper use for the Opera House on Main Street. It gives the Opera House a purpose, and it really is a great show when you watch it. I mean, and it's been most recently re-altered so that way it is closer to originally what they had created in the 60s. So it's closer now than it ever was before to being like it was in the 60s. And so it's really a great what am I trying to say? It's a really great attraction, and I think it's a great pick for being one of those things that I call untouchable, only because if you were to get rid of this attraction, people would, throw a fit, people would have something to say, and then of course it would feel like a piece of Disneyland is gone.
Yeah, right.
And so it's funny because most of us Disney fans, we walk right past Mr. Lincoln without thinking about it, but if it were gone, we would notice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all I had to say about it.
And I guess for this specific attraction, I'm sure this will apply to some of the other ones that we picked, but for this specific one, I would be okay with Lincoln going away if Disney came up with a worthy replacement for it. I mean, of course, I'd still be outraged that this literal piece of Disney history would be leaving the park, but I think I mentioned a long time ago in one of the episodes, I'd be cool with them replacing Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln with sort of like a history about, about Walt's life, how he came to be an animator, how he came to create Disneyland and all his plans for Epcot and all that stuff. I think Alex even pointed out, I mentioned in one of the episodes we talked about this, of how it'd be cool if they had like a Walt animatronic narrating the whole thing, but I think Alex said, I can't remember exactly what you were saying about Walt's animatronics. Do you remember what you were talking about back when we were saying that?
Yes. There's a rule that Disney has, which is like never to characterize Walt Disney, never to. He's basically actually it's kind of funny because the one thing they told me back then was Walt Disney himself is considered untouchable. It's the actual words they told me.
Huh.
Because you can there's a reason why when we signed character signatures, we were not allowed to sign Walt Disney's signature on any pictures of him or anything like that. He lived once and he is gone. And that's the way the company wants people to experience Walt, was as a legend that lived and is gone. He's no longer here. So so they would never create an animatronic of Walt Disney because that characterizes him, that turns him into a character, and it's not right because it's in Disney's view disrespectful to Walt. And so same thing goes for like doing something where like you like they have those CGI pictures that you can do nowadays where like you could CGI Walt Disney in with your picture. And Disney doesn't do that because of that reason, that it characterizes him. It makes him really like a fake figure rather than a real person that he was. So yeah, so that's basically what they told me literally, was that Walt is untouchable and we should not do anything that that characterizes him.
Interesting. I mean, I guess it would be kind of weird seeing a Walt animatronic, and some guy said seeing Walt as a walk-around character would be hysterical. That would be kind of weird to see. So I understand that, but I still think a worthy successor to Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln would be like a story about Walt's life, about Disneyland. They kind of already have that already though, in like the queue for Great Moments, or I don't know what the little exhibition they have there is called, but the Disneyland story is what it's called. It says right above Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. But yeah, like a show about that. They could have like a different animatronic. They could have Abraham Lincoln narrate the entire thing, and that would be 100% fine with me. But anyways, moving on from my number one pick. This is not in any particular order, although this one, Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, is my number one in a particular order, but the rest of them are not in any particular order. I just wanted to point that out to you guys. But moving on to Alex's number one untouchable attraction, Pirates of the Caribbean. Alex, why don't you go ahead and explain why you decided to choose Pirates of the Caribbean?
All right, so I chose Pirates of the Caribbean because it's one of those rides that if you took it out of Disneyland, it would be sorely missed, and even there'd be little Disney riots with fans complaining about the removal of this attraction. So, and then of course, as you know, every time Disney tries to alter this attraction, there's a lot of backlash, there's a lot of stuff like that. So I chose this one because it's one of those Disney classic rides that you can't do too much to, because if you do it, it becomes unrecognizable, and it will ruin people's experience with it. So in any case, it's a great attraction that has a lot of history and was actually the attraction that brought Disneyland back from a near brink of unpopularity. Once Walt Disney died, people stopped going into Disneyland because it seemed like Walt wasn't there. But when they opened Pirates of the Caribbean, it was such a success that it brought people in. So, and ever since then, it's been one of those go-to rides. Everyone has to ride it. That's been just one of those things. So that's why I chose it.
Gosh, I could talk for hours about how amazing Pirates of the Caribbean is. And if you do want to hear me talk about the history of Pirates of the Caribbean, definitely check out my recent episode of Historyland. All new, first episode of the new volume 3 of Historyland about Pirates of the Caribbean. We take a very in-depth look at the history and the, I guess, sort of like inspiration, the backstory behind the attraction. So yeah, it's one of my personal favorites that I've created. My writer Jeremy does an amazing job on the scripts, and we actually did a commentary video of us sort of like commentating over the Historyland attraction, giving sort of like insight onto what, I don't really know how to explain it. It's a commentary, like a commentary track about the episode, but if you guys want to check that out, link is not in the description, but you know where to find it. It's on my Historyland playlist. Moving on from that shameless plug, I know some people have already brought up that this attraction has been changed a lot already, and that's sort of true. It's not sort of true, it is true. This Pirates of the Caribbean has totally changed from its original incarnation, with, of course, the redhead scene being completely changed, turning red into a pirate, and sort of all the other little changes they add. I was going to say the mist screen, but that's gone now. The addition of Captain Jack and Barbossa, all those movie characters from the Pirates of the Caribbean movie franchise. And some guy even pointed out that they have the audio, the ghostly audio. We talked about this when Pirates recently reopened from the refurbishment, but Disney did add back the ghostly audio from the cave scenes that acts as sort of like a transition from the dead pirates into the living pirates, and of course the new mirror pirate, dead alive mirror effect with the little octopus guy holding all the jewelry. But yeah, Pirates of the Caribbean has definitely changed a lot since it was originally opened, and that sort of, with what we're talking about as untouchable rides, like Alex explained, it's not necessarily rides that can't be changed or altered in any way, even though, like I said, Pirates has been altered a lot. But yeah, Pirates really is, I believe, in my opinion, Pirates is the greatest Disney attraction, or I guess classic, the greatest classic Disney attraction, like, ever. Pirates is my favorite Disneyland attraction, tied with Indiana Jones and the Haunted Mansion. But I mean, Pirates of the I could, like I said, I could talk for hours about how great Pirates of the Caribbean is. It is just how do I word this? Pirates of the Caribbean is the Disney attraction. It's not based on any IP like most of the attractions are these days. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's not based on any IP. It's 100% original, and just the work that every Imagineer put into this attraction to make it the best that it could be, even after Walt died, it's just mind-blowing of how amazing the end result was for this attraction. Because, yeah, you guys can hear me talk about my thoughts on Pirates in the Historyland video, but yeah, Pirates of the Caribbean, greatest Disney attraction of all time, in my opinion. And if they got rid of Pirates of the Caribbean in Disneyland, I would be very sad. I would cry myself to sleep every night. That's not true. But what Alex was saying, if they did get rid of Pirates of the Caribbean in Disneyland, people would definitely, like, throw fits. And that's kind of like what happened in the Magic Kingdom. When the Magic Kingdom opened without Pirates of the Caribbean, people were wondering where the Pirates attraction was, because of course it was Disneyland's most popular attraction at the time, and they were wondering why Pirates of the Caribbean wasn't in the Magic Kingdom. And then that of course forced WED into bringing Pirates to Florida and scrapping the Western River Expedition attraction. But yeah, that's a whole other story that you can listen to, learn about in my Historyland episode. But yeah, Pirates of the Caribbean, if they got rid of this, I would be very sad. I would never go back to Disneyland, but yeah, that's my thoughts on Pirates of the Caribbean. Moving on to my second pick. I feel like this is sort of the one that everybody... Well, now that I think about it, maybe this would be the number one instead of Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. My number two is the Disneyland Railroad. Now, the railroad has already been altered to a great extent in the history of it's been in the Disney parks. But, I mean, yeah. I mean, what can you say? There would be no Disneyland without Walt's love for railroads. That's how I feel, at least. And the Disneyland Railroad is really Walt's... I feel like it's Walt's favorite attraction in the entire land. And of course, it ties everything in Disneyland together. I mean, imagine walking through the parks, walking underneath the train station without you being able to hear like the whistle or the horn. That's not the right word. The whistle, I guess, would be the right word from the railroad. Imagine like there being no railroad in Disneyland. It would be completely different. I feel like if this is never going to happen, but if Disney ended up getting rid of the railroad, everybody, and I really do mean everybody would be very livid. And I believe also Shanghai Disneyland does not have a working railroad. I'm pretty sure they do not. But that's a
yeah, you're
story.
right.
And that, I think we actually talked about that on a couple episodes back of why they don't have the railroad. I can't remember, but yeah, Shanghai does not have the railroad, and I feel like of all the videos I've seen, it feels sort of incomplete without the railroad. So yeah, like I said, imagine walking into Disneyland without there being the trains, without there being the train station, the iconic first thing you see when you enter when you go through the turnstiles, the train station. Imagine all that just not being there. It would be a completely different experience. Like I said, I feel like it would feel like something would be missing from the park. But yeah, Alex, what are your thoughts on the Disneyland Railroad?
Well, it's just like you said, there wouldn't be a Disneyland if it wasn't for Walt's love of trains. He wanted a place where he could put a railroad, and then there had to be something to fill in the place where the railroad is. So Disneyland came to be that way. And for one thing, it's what's really amazing is that the company hasn't gotten rid of the railroad. It's really expensive to run these trains because they consume a lot of fuel, they consume a lot of water. The maintenance is unending. Day and night they are maintaining these trains, and they're nothing but huge pieces of metal, and it's like, it takes a lot of maintenance to keep them from blowing up from high pressure boilers, and to keep the electronics running, and to make sure that it's well oiled, because believe it or not, without a ton of oil, this thing would never be rolling. So
yeah,
it's just amazing how expensive it is to maintain steam locomotives, and yet Disney still does it. I mean, when Walt Disney first introduced this railroad, he owned it outright through his own private company, Retlaw, because he knew that if it were under the control of the main company, just the expense alone of running the railroad would make them want to get rid of it. And so he owned it privately so that way he could make sure it stays running. And Disneyland became Disneyland because of this railroad. And so after Walt died and the railroad was given to the Disney company, it's remained because it's become such an integral part of Disneyland. And so it's funny that in the newest theme park, the railroad doesn't exist. In Shanghai, the railroad doesn't exist. and it's because of the expense and also because of like laws and things governing steam boilers and stuff like that, and then also transportation laws, which is just really funny because we don't have that here in America. You know, like there's no laws in America that say like, oh, anything that transports people has to be under transportation laws, because the Disneyland Railroad transports people, and it transports people to multiple locations across the park. So, you know, in Japan, that's the laws there is like, oh, you can't have the railroad in Tokyo Disneyland because if it goes to multiple stations, it's considered transportation, and it would be governed under transportation laws, which don't allow for steam boilers. So so there they only have a railroad that goes to one stop and one stop only, and that's Frontierland. So anyway, without babbling on further, it's amazing that the railroad is still around, and quite frankly, I'm really glad it is. And it's one of those things that Disney would never willingly give up the railroad. And one last fun fact for you, the Disneyland Railroad is the most popular attraction in Disneyland. And I believe even when Star Wars Galaxy's Edge opens, the capacity of the railroad and how many people wait in line for it will still exceed the waiting lines of the guests in the Star Wars Land rides. So it'll still be even more popular than Star Wars.
Interesting. I never thought of the railroad being the most popular attraction, because I always picture just the one looking at like the lines for the one stop. But I guess if you like combine all the people waiting in lines for all the other stops, like in Fantasyland, Main Street, it does sort of make sense. That never crossed my mind to think of it like that. Thank you, Alex, for teaching me something new. Alex always manages to slip something in that makes me learn something that I didn't know before. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Let's see. And like I said, the Disneyland Railroad has changed a lot since its original opening. Even recently, the railroad was rerouted because of Galaxy's Edge. So that's like another case of this attraction isn't untouchable. It's been changed a whole bunch, but yeah, Alex explained it before. So yeah, moving on to Alex's number 2 pick for Untouchable Rides in Disneyland, the Haunted Mansion. Alex, why do you believe the Haunted Mansion is an untouchable ride?
Well, once again, reminding people what I mean by untouchable is that it's something that Disney would never willingly get rid of. And I believe it's one of those attractions that they won't ever get rid of because of its popularity, and because it's become kind of like a cult hit. You know, like Disney, the Haunted Mansion has its own following of like dedicated fans just to its own. I mean, forget Pirates of the Caribbean. Haunted Mansion has a set of fans that dress for the occasion. I mean, it's incredible. And so it's so popular. It's become such a classic at Disneyland. And it's unique if you think about it. Granted, there are multiple Haunted Mansions in different Disney parks, but the idea of the Haunted Mansion is unique. Being able to visit this, this stately manor, and tour its 999 happy haunts. It's just amazing. Knott's Berry Farm has its, scary, what do they call them? Mazes and things like that you get stuck in and stuff like that. But Disneyland always has Haunted Mansion year round, and it's extremely popular. So in any case, so that's why I chose it.
I mean, I almost said haunted house. I had those tacky attractions on my mind, but Haunted Mansion is almost like about to take its place in my mind as my favorite Disney attraction. And I can't wait to do a history land on the Haunted Mansion, just because I feel like there's so much history to talk about with the Haunted Mansion, and it'll probably be such a fun episode to work on. But yeah, Haunted Mansion. If Disney ever got rid of the Haunted Mansion, like I said, the same with Pirates of the Caribbean, I would never visit Disneyland again, because the Haunted Mansion is, in my mind, I always try to compare the Haunted Mansion to Pirates to see which one is better, and I can never come to a conclusion. I feel like both of these attractions have their own, I guess, like their own strengths and their own weaknesses. But I feel like sometimes I feel like Haunted Mansion is better, but then sometimes I feel like Pirates is better. But I guess it's one of those days where I feel like Haunted Mansion is better than Pirates of the Caribbean. I probably just because I've been watching a lot of history videos on it the past couple days. But yeah, Haunted Mansion. Gosh, that sound, I need to get rid of that. That's like a really annoying sound. But anyways, of course there have been changes to the Haunted Mansion. Some guy said the pun-making bride might be the worst addition to that ride. I 100% agree. I believe he's talking about Constance. Is that her name? Constance Hatchaway. Something weird like that. But it's just like the mannequin with like the face and the arms awkwardly projected onto... It's just not... I'm not a fan of that addition to the ride. Just because the projections are so awkward. It's like a mannequin with like a completely blank, like smooth face, but then they project like an actual face onto it. It doesn't work as well as the other projections.
I'm gonna defend Constance for a second because she is actually one of my favorite aspects of the Haunted Mansion.
Really?
And yes, so on her behalf, I have to say something. So, she looks like a mannequin because she's a ghost who has possessed a mannequin. So it's a mannequin that is holding her wedding dress, and she has possessed it, and so that's why she doesn't really have a face that has a nose or anything on it. It's just a mannequin, and that's the reason why she has no arms, because the mannequin has no arms. But she's possessed the mannequin because she possessed the wedding dress. So that's why she looks like that. And a lot of people like wonder like just like you have, like, how come she doesn't look like a fully formed ghost like the other ghosts have? But that's why, because she's kind of possessed the dress, which is on the mannequin. So and whereas before Constance was literally a fully formed ghost animatronic and had a very dark, I think almost black face. It was really creepy looking, but yeah, and she doesn't necessarily say puns, but she repeats the vows, the wedding vows, and and emphasizes certain things like for better or for worse, or in sickness and in death, or so anyway. So that's why I like her, because she's kind of daring, she's kind of bold, and and she's not afraid to show you her evil side. So I don't know, I like Constance.
Interesting. I never thought of it being that the ghost possessed the mannequin. That's interesting. Kind of almost gives me a new appreciation for it. But then again, in my mind, it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of weird seeing like the contrast from seeing the mannequin with like the face and the arms projected onto it, and then like right after that it's like the amazing Hatbox Ghost animatronic. It's just kind of weird in my mind. But okay, Alex 100% convinced me that Constance Hatchaway is not a terrible addition to the Haunted Mansion. But yeah, speaking of the Hatbox Ghost, the Hatbox Ghost is one of my favorite Disney animatronics ever. I mean, have you seen the Hatbox Ghost? If you haven't seen the Hatbox Ghost, definitely check it out, because it's one of the greatest. Whenever I see like ride throughs, or whenever I ride it myself, I try to figure out how they make it look like his head goes from like on his shoulders to like in the box. And I never really want to look into like the mechanics of how it's done. I always try to just figure it out how it's done on my own, and I can never figure it out. But yeah, the Hatbox Ghost is one of my favorite.
You.
Alex, ooh, I don't know. I don't want to get the magic ruined for me. Okay, yeah, go ahead. I'm dying to know how it's done.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure.
Okay. So for the Hatbox Ghost, okay, the head that's on his shoulder, and under the hat, of course. Okay, that one is a face that is shaped just like his skeletal face, and it's projected on from behind by a little micro projector. And that face can actually be physically lifted or dropped into the torso. And so every few seconds, when his head disappears from the hat box, the actual face will pop up from the torso and into the hat, and then the projector light will turn on, so you can see his face and his eyes moving about. Now, the actual hat box is an even more complicated thing to explain, because it's hard, quite frankly. But basically, it's okay. So the hat box is round, cylindrical in shape, really, and the back side of the hat box that's facing the Hatbox Ghost's torso is a three-dimensional kind of screen, if you will. It's kind of like a Pepper's Ghost effect. So basically, there's a background screen, so that way you can't see past the hat box towards the body, and then there's a scrim, a reflective scrim that's in front of that, and it's kind of concave or convex shape, which means it kind of is rounded, and it's rounded towards you, not away from you.
Mm-hmm.
And the top of the hat box is a screen, and the screen is the flat image of the face, and so the flat image of the face reflects down onto this convex reflective scrim, and it looks like a three-dimensional head. So that's the best way I could explain it.
Interesting.
I don't know if that made sense to you guys.
Interesting. I was trying to piece that all together visually. Yeah. Thank you, Alex, for explaining how that's done. I have no idea how any of that technical stuff works, but now I know. If someone wants to know how it's done, I can recite what Alex told me, even though I have no idea how. Like, I'm trying.
I have no idea what I said.
Yeah, like I heard you, and I'm trying to like understand it, but it's like what goes there, and then the.
Yeah, Sam the Griff is like, wait, what? I'm lost.
Oh my gosh. But anyways, thank you, Alex, for explaining how that's done. Next time I write it, I'm gonna listen to what you said just a couple seconds ago, and I'll try to piece together what it looks like. But yeah, while you're saying that, I couldn't stop laughing at what Max said. The original Hatbox Ghost is stored away with Walt Disney's frozen toes. That is the funniest thing I've ever. That's the funniest thing I've read all day. Thank you, Max. That's going in the Hall of Fame on my Discord channel. Yeah, if you guys haven't joined my Discord, definitely do that. It's in the description. Bryce, how can you send me your ghost story? If you can send it on Twitter, Discord, or you can even email it to me. Yeah, if you can email me your ghost story, and then we'll read it at the end of the episode. I'm trying to think of what the email I have set up is. I think it's, I'll just type it in chat. That should be the email that you can email it to, and I'll open it up right away once you send it, and we'll read it at the end of the episode. But Bryce says thank you. No, thank you for sending in your ghost story. Yeah, Sam says, what, I'm so lost. Oh my gosh, but yeah, let's see. Moving on from the Haunted Mansion, we sort of got sidetracked there, but anyways, moving on from the Haunted Mansion to my number 3, my final pick for untouchable things. This isn't an attraction, but untouchable things in Disneyland. I guess these would all be tied for one, now that I think about it, like tied for first place, well, because the castle...
That's why they call them a top 6, because it's, you know, it's all the same. It's all the top.
But yeah, the castle for me, I don't know. It's weird because in Hong Kong they are changing the castle to, they're adding like this huge bit behind it to sort of distinguish it from the other castles in the Disney parks, because the Hong Kong castle is like an almost carbon copy duplicate of the original Sleeping Beauty castle in Disneyland. And they are altering it, not small little changes, not small like paint jobs. They are full-blown changing it into a whole new castle. I believe we talked about this on an episode a while back, but yeah, the castle, I don't know how I feel about them changing the castle in Hong Kong. I mean, I'm okay with them changing it just because I don't want there to be any duplicate castles out there. But then again, if they did that in Disneyland, I'm sure it doesn't have as much of an impact on us, since they're changing the one in Hong Kong. But I'm sure if they did the same exact thing that they're doing in Hong Kong to the one in Anaheim, I feel like that would really be the breaking point, or I guess like the tipping point for a lot of Disney fans. I mean, sure, you can get rid of Pirates of the Caribbean or the Haunted Mansion, but I feel like if they really like altered the castle in like any extreme ways, I feel like that would really be the tipping point as to like what Disney fans would consider to be like terrible things that Disney has done. But I mean, because the castle, of course, was overseen by Walt himself, it's sort of, it of course is like the icon of Disneyland. It's like the icon of like Disney itself almost. But yeah, if they ever changed the castle, I said this for all the other ones, but for this one I really mean it. If they ever changed the castle in Disneyland, like majorly changed it, I would 100% riot in the streets. I would get my picket fences. I would picket outside of the entrance to Disneyland. But yeah, Alex, what are your thoughts on the castle being an untouchable thing in Disneyland?
Well, I'm really glad you selected this one, because this is the epitome of what I was trying to say with this whole untouchable episode thing, which is how do I say that? Which is that if there's anything in Disneyland Park that could not be majorly altered, it would be Sleeping Beauty Castle. And there's no particular reason that anybody's really said or spoken for it. Everybody kind of knows it. You know, any Disney fan knows in the back of their head that you do not touch Sleeping Beauty Castle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do not alter it, do not damage it, do not do anything except plus it up. You know, like, you know, you can dress it up for anniversaries,
Mm-hmm.
or you can update the little show that's inside, but do not physically alter this landmark. And that's because it has become such a classic landmark of not just the park, but the company.
Yeah.
You know, Sleeping Beauty Castle is like Mickey Mouse. And, you know, you don't just tear it down and create a new character out of it. It's got to be the same character and stuff like that. So I'm really glad you selected this one. And it's kind of interesting, like you said, about the castle in Hong Kong being changed, because it was a carbon copy of ours. And honestly, I think that the Imagineers in Hong Kong are probably just suffering a little bit of castle envy, and and just kind of thought like, oh, well, our castle needs to be bigger, you know. But as some people will state, bigger is not always better. It's how you use it. So in any case, our castle is beautiful, and it's pristine, and it's clean, and the best part is it is perfectly, like, how do I say it? It's intimate. It doesn't feel like it's, you know, like something that will frighten you just from looking at it. It's not huge and monstrous. It is cute, and it is lovable, and as one person put, it's huggable, you know. And I don't really know how else to say that, but the Fantasyland castle was specifically designed so that way you accept it the way it looks, and that it appears something that is not incredibly oversized. It's something that appears appropriate for Disneyland size. And so that's what I love about this castle, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. I mean, of course, people who come from Florida say, oh, the castle's really tiny, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is like how beautiful it is, and, you know, and the fact that it's the first castle that Disney ever created, you know. So anyway, that's what I have to say about the castle, and it's definitely the number one thing in the park that will probably never ever be majorly altered.
Hopefully it will never ever be majorly altered. I always, like, in my mind, I always try to figure out which one is better, the Disneyland castle or the one from the Magic Kingdom. And it's always a tough choice. It's always a really tough choice. Sometimes I sway towards the Magic Kingdom one. Sometimes I sway towards the Disneyland one. But yeah, I don't think I'll ever be able to answer that question. But anyways, moving on to... Oh, my voice just cracked. Anyways, moving on to our final pick for Untouchable Rides. Alex has decided to choose It's a Small World. Now, Alex, why do you think It's a Small World is an untouchable attraction in Disney parks?
I believe It's a Small World is untouchable because, once again, it's super classic. It's definitely one of those rides that you don't want to get rid of because it'll make a lot of people upset or a lot of people unhappy. And not just to mention that, but because it is part of the character of Disneyland. You know, it's one of those things where if it were missing, you would notice it. It makes Disneyland feel Disneyland. And without it, there's definitely something missing from the park. And finally, because of the message that it sends out, the message of peace on earth, the message of, you know, of everyone coming together and, you know, and working as, you know, as well, a family of humans on this planet. You know, it's just like, it has a good message, and it's beloved by just I think millions of people love this attraction. And so, if you got rid of it, or if you majorly altered it or demolished, the facade to make way for something smaller, I mean, people would throw a fit. And so, I know I'd be one of the first people out there just going like, don't change this attraction, don't destroy it, don't get rid of it. So that's why I chose it last. I mean, and all of these attractions that we've chosen, I mean, these aren't the only ones that are untouchable in the park. I mean, there's other ones too, but these are the top 6 that we believed would be attractions that Disney could never just remove willy-nilly from the park. So, and It's a Small World is, just as the rest of them, such a classic and so loved. And it's, and especially its song is like one of the most famous Disney songs, if not the famous Disney song out there. So that's why I chose Small.
Yeah, it's weird because It's a Small World is almost completely different from any of the other attractions we've picked, because It's a Small World is almost like elevated from just a theme park attraction to like a cultural, like pop culture icon. I mean, I don't know a single person who has either been to Disney or has not been to Disney, but I don't know a single person who doesn't know the lyrics to It's a Small World. This is the theme song for It's a Small World. I mean, granted, it's like just like 3 or 4 words repeated over and over, but still, it really is like like a pop culture icon, really. So if you got rid of the attraction in Disneyland, it would be like, actually, it would be very, gosh, I'm trying to think of how to word this. It would be like devastating. It would be a disaster. And Sam is saying no mountains. He's calling us crazy because we didn't pick Space Mountain or Big Thunder Mountain or Splash Mountain. I mean, I guess those are kind of untouchable, but not to the extent as It's a Small World or The Castle or Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. I mean, sure, I'd be sad if they got rid of Space Mountain. But I mean, they already do get rid of Space Mountain. Sometimes they replace it with the Halloween Ghost Galaxy overlay and then the Star Wars overlay. So it's not, they don't really have like the same kind of nostalgia. I guess I don't think that'd be the right word. They don't have the same effect as It's a Small World does, or as The Castle or Pirates of the Caribbean. But I mean, I guess they do. Yeah. I guess they do replace the Haunted Mansion with the Nightmare Before Christmas one. But anyways, moving on from that. Yeah, It's a Small World is like literally a pop culture icon. Like I said, if they got rid of it, I feel like, I don't know, this is a weird one. I feel like some people would be happy they got rid of it, because if you're looking in chat, the chat is like almost split of how people that like It's a Small World or people that don't like It's a Small World. So I feel like this one would have a different effect compared to, like we just talked about, The Castle. But yeah, so it's almost kind of weird seeing that, because for me, It's a Small World is an amazing attraction. After the Historyland I did on it, I really do have like a newfound appreciation for it, and Mary Blair, who designed the attraction. But yeah, it's weird because it almost is like completely different from like Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. But yeah, It's a Small World, in our opinion, is an untouchable ride. If they got rid of It's a Small World, we would be very, very, very sad. Let's see. I think that's it for that. Yep. Alex, any closing thoughts on untouchable attractions in Disneyland?
Yes. So if you really think about it, any one of these 6 attractions that we chose, if it were missing from the park, it would not feel like Disneyland. Disneyland would definitely feel like a different experience without it. Even if you don't ride the attraction, just knowing it's there helps you to feel like, okay, I'm in the Disneyland I know and love. But without them, it feels like a very different park. And so There's other rides too that are worthy of the list of untouchables, like Jungle Cruise or the Mark Twain Riverboat. Um, but I don't think rides like Space Mountain belong on that list because Space Mountain is, well, I mean, they've already replaced the track with an all new track route in 2005. You know, they've majorly changed the exterior of the attraction. So it's not really even the same ride that opened at all when it first opened. So it's I wouldn't say it's untouchable, but you know, but if there was another attraction, and this is just funny because I just thought of it right now, but if there were another attraction that I would have thought maybe a year ago or 2 years ago was untouchable, would be Star Tours.
Yeah.
I would have, before they announced Galaxy's Edge, I would have never guessed that Star Tours would go because it was so popular. And it was becoming a classic. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting. So that's my closing thoughts.
Yeah, I was gonna choose Star Tours as well, but then it's sort of like running. I was just thinking, Galaxy's Edge is opening in like a year, and they're probably gonna end up closing it once Galaxy's Edge opens. So yeah, that's why I didn't pick Star Tours. I mean, I was seriously considering putting it on the list, but yeah, these other attractions that we choose are far more untouchable than Star Tours is at the moment. But I forget. After this, we normally do the ghost stories, or is it Words with Walt and then the ghost stories? I'm trying to remember. Let's just get to the ghost stories, and then we'll do Words with Walt. Or was it the other way around? Gosh, I'm so confused right now. Let's do some Words with Walt, and then we'll get to the ghost stories. I'm probably messing this up, but this week's quote I picked out. This week's quote is, "It's kind of fun to do the impossible," of course, by Walt Disney. Everyone's saying Ghost was first. Dang it. Next time we'll get it right. Anyways, yeah, the quote, "It's kind of fun to do the impossible." This is one of my favorite quotes by Walt Disney. Whenever I read this quote, I always think back to the Wonderful World of Disney episode where Walt is talking to, I think it's Julie Ream, the ambassador of Disneyland at the time, about the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction. And then he says to her, or they're talking about how the guests are going to get out of the burning building, and then Walt says that they're going to go up the waterfall, and then he says, "Anything's possible at Disneyland." That was going to be the quote that I chose here, but I decided to switch it up with this one. But yeah, that's what I always think about when I read this quote. It's kind of fun to do the impossible, because Bryce is saying this is an overused quote. Yeah, it's overused. It's kind of cliche to pick, but it is one of my favorite quotes. Just because it's kind of fun to do the impossible. Walt literally I guess you could say Walt did the impossible, because going back to what I was just talking about Pirates of the Caribbean, if you think about it, you can't in real life go down a waterfall, travel through various scenes of dead pirates and their skeletons surrounded by treasure. You see pirates drinking wine or drinking rum, and then you travel through like an actual fight with like a pirate ship versus like a fort, and then you travel through all the other scenes, and then literally a building on fire, like a town on fire, and then you go up the waterfall to get out of the attraction back to the loading. It's literally like that wouldn't happen in real life. It's literally impossible in real life. And this is like one of my favorite quotes of all time, because Walt literally did the impossible with creating Disneyland, with creating all the attractions he helped creating audio animatronic figures shaped like humans. Like before Walt, that was like, I'm sure nobody ever thought of creating like robot humans to like sort of recite lines. I mean, sure, I guess you could say like apocalypse movies, stuff like that, but I don't think those were a thing back then. But yeah, like literally creating human audio animatronic figures to like repeat the same actions over and over again that are like almost as close to lifelike as you can get. And then later down the line, all the other amazing things that he's done and that the company has done. Like we were just talking about, like the stunt show, the animatronic stunt thingamabobs that we were talking about. Like literally, I was talking about how that is. I never thought I'd see that in my lifetime, and it's like that is like almost one of the perfect examples of this quote because, yeah, I sort of went off on a rant there. But Alex, what are your thoughts on this quote?
Well, I know a lot of people are saying, oh, it's an overused quote. But the difference here is that we're not just citing this quote, we're explaining why we think this quote is important to us. So there's a good reason for using this quote. And that being said, I love this quote because when I think about it, Walt Disney has made a career out of doing the impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, he created the world's first feature-length cartoon, you know, when everyone told him no one's going to sit through a movie-length cartoon. And he did the impossible when, you know, he said that he was going to combine animation with classical music, you know, or when he was going to open Disneyland, the world's first theme park, world's first theme park, you know, and a magic kingdom that takes you into storytelling. I mean, you know, and then of course he kept going from there with, you know, like you said, audio animatronics, and then he moved on to ride systems that do amazing things, and then finally, you know, creating a place in Florida that would, you know, have this city like, you know, experience and being a grand, you know, resort and things like that. And I mean, granted, he never got to complete Epcot, but Disney World was completed, and it became, you know, this amazing, impossible place that was opened in the middle of a Florida swamp, you know, and it's now the world's most profitable and popular resort destination. So it's just amazing how Walt Disney and his company have done so many impossible things, you know, and it's just really great because so many people were naysayers to Walt Disney saying, you can't do this, you can't do that, there's no way you can accomplish this, or no way this other thing is feasible. And he proved them all wrong every single time, you know. So that's why this is, you know, one of my favorite quotes as well.
Yeah, and what we just talked about is why Walt is like my hero, because he did all these impossible things, like audio animatronics, creating the first feature-length animated film, because he, like we said, he literally did the impossible. And it's, how can you not look up to a guy like that, who always continued to push himself and his company to keep doing the impossible, keep creating new things that no one has ever thought of, no one has ever seen. And yeah, this really is one of my favorite quotes of all time by Walt Disney. And I think that's going to wrap up Words with Walt. We're going to go ahead and move into our spooky stories. If you guys have any scary stories you want to share with us, you can comment them down below in the comment section. You can email them to me. You can send them to me on Twitter in a direct message. Send them to me on Discord. Any way that you have to contact me, you can send me your scary stories. This week, we are reading a scary story from Bryce, because for some reason I had it copied and pasted, but for some reason it got lost in the shuffles of my computer files. So Bryce had to email it to me, but that's okay. We are going to read Bryce's story. Let me get this right. All right. Here we go. I'm going to turn this light off. We're going to get real spooky. I think that lighting is good. All right. Okay, this is from Bryce. He's typing in chat right now. Thank you, Bryce, for sending in your scary story. Let's see. Here's Bryce's story. Here's my ghost story for today, he says. When I was young, I used to catch the bus with my dad to his work. Normally, I would sleep the entire ride, but once I stayed awake. I looked out the window to the pier. That's when I saw the fish market. It was a pristine, white building with a bright neon sign. I saw an odd family and a worker out front. The family looked odd because of what they were wearing. The father was wearing a casual brown suit with a fedora. The mother wore a basic red dress, and the kid was wearing a fancy shirt and pants. The worker was wearing a white paper hat and an apron. I had visited a fish market restaurant that looked similar in San Diego, and I loved it. So I asked my dad why we never went there. He replied, "That place is closed." But I just saw people go inside, so I insisted that it was opened and pointed at the worker. My dad replied, "There's no one there, boy. Quit it." I was so confused. That evening after work, I purposefully made us detour through the ward so I could show my dad. When I saw the fish market, I was shocked. The paint was dirty and chipping, the windows were boarded up, there was graffiti on the sides, and the sign was missing its lights. It was in ruins, and I was puzzled. My dad told me that place had been closed since the 50s or 60s. I told him what I saw, and he turned around and started walking to the bus stop and said, "Boy, you saw ghosts." I never forgot that day. Spooky! Thank you, Bryce, for sending in your scary story. I was going to bring up before of how I visited the Hotel del Coronado, and I didn't see any ghosts, but maybe next time I visit, I'll actually see some ghosts. But thank you, Bryce, for sending in your scary story. Very interesting, very spooky. The what's it called? The thing he wrote, Spookums, is what he wrote in the subject line of the email. But yeah, thank you, Bryce, for sending in your scary stories. Gosh, this episode is already an hour and a half. I think it's best to just end it right here. Bryce says he saw a ghost at the Hotel del Coronado. Oh my gosh. Next week, Bryce, email me your story about the Hotel del Coronado, and next week we'll have Alex share another one of his stories. Gosh, yeah. I say this every week, I wish I could see a ghost. And then, as I say that, I always picture in the back of my mind that next night I go to sleep, I'm gonna get like murdered in my sleep by a ghost. But I mean, I'd be fine with getting murdered by a ghost in my sleep if it means that I saw a ghost. That sounds really weird to say, but yeah. So thank you to everyone who watched this stream. I think we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up here, because this is a really long stream. This was a really great stream as well. Thank you all for joining. Hope you all enjoyed. We want to hear your thoughts on everything we talked about, whether it be the new Stunt animatronics that Disney recently unveiled, or whether it be your thoughts on our thoughts on the Untouchable Rides at Disneyland. Of course, you can find links to Alex's channel, Alex's Twitter in the description, and you can find links to my Patreon, my Twitter, and you guys are already on my channel, so you won't need a link to my channel. But yeah, thank you all for joining me. We hope you all enjoyed, and have a great big beautiful tomorrow.